This is Pete Fletzer. On this episode of Around the Galaxy, we are talking to YouTuber and fan film critic Kyle Katarn.
And creating a fan film is the ultimate expression of your headcanon. You're offering your own installment to the Star Wars movies and saying, this is what I say happened at some point.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Welcome to episode number 149 of Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am your host, Pete Fletzer. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first visit with Around the Galaxy, well, welcome aboard. So glad that you could join us. Let me ask you before we get going to hit that subscribe button, and I'm going to tell you why. Around the Galaxy is part of the ATG cast stream of podcasts, and we bring you 3 different shows every single week. On Thursdays, like you're listening to right now, we bring you either Around the Galaxy or Podcast of the Wills, hosted by Nick Milkey. On Saturdays, we say, give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the galaxy, because we bring you a 5-minute Star Wars news digest. We keep up with all the action happening in the Star Wars news world, and we bring it to you every Saturday morning with no spin, no clickbait. And then on Mondays, we bring you the replay of our live Friday night show called Streaming Star Wars, where Nick and I go live on YouTube and we have a conversation with you about all the things happening in Star Wars, whether it's the Book of Boba Fett or any of the key news that's happening. We bring it there, sort of a sports radio style conversation. And what's fun about it is we keep our eye on the chat and we hang out with you and we bring your voice into the conversation. Well, this week on Around the Galaxy, we are talking to Kyle Katarn. Now, I don't think that's his real name. We didn't get into that on the show, but you know, you and I both know that Kyle Katarn is a famous Star Wars video game character. I don't think that's him, but Kyle runs a YouTube channel. It's quickly becoming one of the more successful ones out there. He does something that's super unique in that he does fan film reviews. He looks at hundreds of fan films and reviews them and gives reactions and has a really great time with them. He also covers all the news in Star Wars. He does video game streaming. He's a really interesting guy, and you know what? He's got a great and interesting story to tell. So I'm really excited to bring you our conversation.
Hey, did you forget about your robot over here?
Yeah, hey, no,
Hello?
That's cool. Hop.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm ready to do my review.
Okay. What do you got?
Okay, but before we do, can I talk about this whole Nick Milkey Podcast of the Wills thing again?
Sure. What seems...
It's more related to my question about how many shows we're doing. So we started with 2 shows, and then we went to 3 shows. And then from there, now you say we have 4 shows, but you play them 3 days a week.
Yeah,
it's a little confusing. Can you help us right out?
I would love to. So every Thursday, you're going to get either Podcast of the Wills or Around the Galaxy.
Okay.
Both are interview shows. Both take the time to take a deep dive with some amazing voices from the Star Wars galaxy.
So basically, 2 guys have the same show, decide to team up and do it together.
I wouldn't go that far. Anyway, so then on Saturdays, you get Disturbances in the Force, which is our 5-minute, no spin, no clickbait news show.
Right, that's nothing new. You've been doing that for a while.
Right, so, and then on Mondays, now you're going to get the replay of our live Friday show called Streaming Star Wars.
Well, that's confusing.
I don't think it's that confusing. I mean, we record it live on Friday nights, and then we put the audio in the stream on Mondays.
Okay, so is it Friday or is it Monday?
Yes.
I don't really feel like yes is an option to answer that particular question.
Okay, so let me try to explain it. On Friday nights, on our YouTube channel, live, we record a show called Streaming Star Wars. And there we talk about all the Star Wars news, as well as really take a deep dive into the streaming Star Wars that's coming to us on Disney+.
Clever name.
And then so on Monday, we take the audio from that live Friday show and we put it in the stream.
Right, because the world needs another Star Wars podcast.
Okay, all right. Well, does it make sense at least now to you?
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I'm not going to say I'm super excited about it. Sounds like more work for me, probably.
I don't think there's any work for you.
All right, well, here's Kyle Katarn after these messages.
This is Kyle Katarn, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Kyle, how are you?
Hello there. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for joining me. I can't help but comment immediately on the fact that you have sort of this black background with helmets. I've got sort of this purple background with helmets.
Yin and yang.
Sort of. you're sort of like prequel Kenobi. I'm kind of OT looking Kenobi.
Could this mean that we are a podcasting dyad in the fandom?
It could very well be. It could be. Who knew? So, Kyle, thank you so much for hanging out with us. This is great. I've been following you for a while, and we've started talking to each other a little bit over social media. But for the people who don't know you, maybe give us a little bit of your background.
Well, first and foremost, hello there. I am Kyle Katarn. I am a YouTuber and a Twitch streamer. I specialize in reacting to and reviewing Star Wars fan films, and adding knowledge from the expanded universe. I react to all of the current Disney Plus releases and the Star Wars canon comics as well, and try and farm them for Easter eggs and references, point out things like that. And I'm also playing my way through Star Wars: The Old Republic storylines for the first time. I'm 10 years late to the party, but nevertheless, I'm diving through it, and everyone is having a great time with it. We have 2 guilds, and we do a lot of live Twitch content every Sunday. SWTOR Sundays. I've got a guild for both factions, and they're always open to the public. Anyone wants to join us in Twitch is welcome to just jump on the Discord channel, into our voice chat, and join us on whatever we're doing. It's a lot of fun.
It's great because that's one of those games that I dabbled in a little bit, 8 years ago, whatever it was.
Sure.
And I just, you just got to kind of pick what you're going to dive into. And so it's great though, to stop, hop on those every now and then and have a look. And it just sort of, it's amazing that game still has such an active community.
I mean, I think it really speaks to how versatile the storytelling is within the game. BioWare just has this excellent thing going where you can roll a character very much of a certain ideology, like a Sith warrior versus a Jedi Knight, right? Like light and dark. But within that character of that Jedi Knight, you have choices narratively in the dialogue where you can be a jerk or you can be a really nice guy, and that will make influences in where the story goes. So you can play endless amounts of the same character over and end with different results. And so that even the multiplayer aspect of this MMO aside, you can keep coming back to the game. And that's, I think, the unspoken demographic of MMOs that always kind of gets left behind is the solo players. They're out there and they're keeping this game alive. I think one of the reasons why people have kind of flocked to my Old Republic content is because they're kind of underrepresented in the reaction world. No one's really reacting to a 10-year-old MMO anymore. Right. And a lot of the story, a lot of the end game story is locked behind operation content. You need to get 16 people together in a room if you want to know what happens in the next chapter. And so my guilds are kind of providing a way for people to get that last bit of the story too. So
that's great. Yeah,
it's very fun.
Yeah, and it's amazing that this game still just continues to have that following, and it's I would call it a cult following, but that seems too simple a way to put it. It's the people who are into it, like yourself, are just having so much fun with it still, and I think that's a testament to the way it was built.
I consider myself to be a noob still.
Yeah,
I've played my way through maybe half of what the content has to offer, not even counting the expansions, of which a brand new one's coming in February. So they're still adding so much to the game.
Yeah.
But a lot of the people that flocked to my guild are hardcore veterans. They've been playing since launch. And the people who are all about this game, let me tell you, they are devout to this game. In a lot of cases, it's the only game they play.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, see, and that's the problem. When I watch you play it, I'm like, what, I'm gonna jump in, and then I'm like, no, I have to pick where I'm gonna get involved. But
an investment, it's a time investment.
It is, but it seems well worth it. But so, Kyle, tell me a little bit about your sort of entry into Star Wars and when it became a part of your life, and if you remember kind of your first time.
To start at the very beginning, when I was 1 year old. The local theater held on to Return of the Jedi longer than all the ones around it. So in 1984, they were still playing it. So I was able to go see it with my dad. I have no recollection of this, but I can still claim to be there. I can still get the street cred from being there in that original run. No recollection whatsoever. No, I'm very much part of the 1997 wave of new fans when the special editions were re-released into theaters again.
Right.
I was in that crowd that went and saw it, and immediately my mind was blown. Had to go home, watch the old VHSs of the originals, and then I watched them each in the theater. And I was all about those movies. And my older cousin came over one day, heard me buzzing about it, and handed me a copy of Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. and said, there's more, right? And then the floodgates opened, and there was no turning back from there.
Yeah, it's it's funny. How many people got into Star Wars as a result of the special? I mean, I was an OT baby. I was 7 years old when the first one came out, and I saw it in the theaters with my dad. Like you, I don't have a ton of recollection. I just remember kind of the ride home and pretending I was shooting down TIE fighters in the back of the station wagon because, I just rolled around the back. It was before safety was invented, so I was able to just
the good old days.
Yeah, yeah. And then I was very fortunate, and I was doing my work with Star Wars Galaxy magazine around that time during the special editions, and that was when I got to work with Steve Sansweet. And I love hearing that was sort of your sort of re-entry or your full immersion time into Star Wars, because that was such, and it's funny because it was sort of that initial, it was probably the first time we saw a little bit of even fan backlash that probably meant nothing to you as an OT guy. I remember people saying, no, the Jabba scene is this or that, or all the special edition.
I remember frustration about the Greedo Han becoming a 2-shot sequence,
Yep.
It shouldn't even be a question of who fired first. Han is the only one that fired originally.
Right. Yeah. Yes. But it's so funny because you do have that. That was that first time where, this sort of beloved series, which had no controversy, essentially, suddenly, I think we started to see where fans could go with that. But
if only we knew a few short years later, 1999. The forums would be set on fire.
So how did you respond to, speaking of 99, what was your initial response to Phantom Menace? And I mean, again, you were still, so you said you were reading the Heir to the Empire books. You were a Star Wars fan. You saw it in 84, but you were 1, so it didn't count. But it counts. I'm giving you the credit for it for sure.
Thank you.
But
means a lot. You don't know.
Yeah. So did you were you into Star Wars before you saw the special editions, or did that really kind of make you
I had a casual interest, and it was just sort of like a special thing that I did with my dad. And that was kind of my main association with it. Every time it was played on TV, I would draw pictures of Darth Vader and pictures of stormtroopers and stuff. Like I definitely, but I don't know. When you're that young, when you're like 2-3 years old, the things you do aren't necessarily they're voluntary, but they're not fully thought out.
Right.
I'm just kind of I'm emulating my parents at that point who are watching sci-fi TV shows, Right. I consider the 97 re-release my springboard into it, because that's when I voluntarily was like, you know what, I'm going to go and see that movie. And it was all me,
Right. So then you were fully sunk in, and then Phantom Menace came out. What was your response to that?
Well, I was very, very excited. I loved it. I was every time the commercial came on, I'd have to tell everyone in the house, like, shut up. Like little me just yelling at the room. That got old real quick, I'm sure. I remember all of the excited speculation that I had. I remember seeing, this is kind of embarrassing to even say now, but I remember seeing Amidala for like 2 seconds on the screen as the queen and all the regalia and stuff. And I was like, could that be the Emperor? But hear me out. I thought that the Emperor is so much younger here, is like all dolled up in some I don't know, like very Eastern looking, like their regent is all just like prettied up no matter what.
Sure.
I didn't know. I was like, maybe this is set like a really long time ago, because I also was under the assumption that the Emperor was like 500 years old.
Right. Right.
I don't think you look at a wrinkly man and logically go, oh, Force lightning, of course.
Right.
So seeing this young person, and like, because of the face paint, like, I'm a kid. I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at necessarily. But once the movie came out, worth noting, I was also in the crowd that was spoiled by the track title, Qui-Gon's Noble End.
Me too. Yeah.
Okay, we have that in common. Yeah.
Yes.
So I knew that going in, but I didn't really know who Qui-Gon was going in. So it was still enough of like a surprise and everything.
Right.
Seeing Ray Park as Darth Maul, everything changed. Because the dark side were always the bad guys to me, watching the OT.
Yeah.
They'd never been like quite as cool looking. Also, I was a little bit older and a little bit edgier by that time.
Sure.
But I remember seeing just the way he was spinning that lightsaber around and doing those flips and kicks. I was like, this is the coolest character I've ever seen. I was all on that Darth Maul train when that movie came out. I never hated on it. I thought it was really good, but I was young enough to just be swept in the excitement of getting a new Star Wars movie. You know, I have learned as an adult that marketing is very effective on me. You look at the wall behind me, I see that it is effective on you too.
Yes, I tend to sort of say, oh, I'm not going to buy that. Oh, I just click buy now. That's a problem.
Like, what's that, Pizza Hut? This movie's amazing. You bet it is.
Right. Taco Bell, I'll be there.
Convinced. But I was just on cloud nine. I loved it. I remember a few years later when Attack of the Clones came out. Oh, so important context here. I grew up in New Zealand. That's where I was born.
Okay.
And I moved with my family to America in 2000. So after Phantom Menace, but before Attack of the Clones. A local soap opera in New Zealand called Shortland Street. It's been running for damn near 30 years now. Shout out if anyone's seen it. There was a Guatemalan doctor in the hospital, Dr. Rapita, and he was played by Temuera Morrison.
Oh, wow.
Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, young Temuera Morrison. And that was the first place that I saw him from. And then he was Jake Hickey in What Becomes of the Broken Hearted and Once Were Warriors, which are very, very well-known New Zealand independent films, not very well known outside of that. But when I first saw him as Jango Fett, he wasn't an unknown face. He was all these people that I had seen growing up. So it was really surreal. And like, I had just moved to an unfamiliar place, to the United States. And like, this guy that was like a comforting piece of like watching TV back home was suddenly in like my favorite movie series. It just felt very personal. Yeah, as a kid who's just moved from New Zealand to USA, like here's a little slice of home in your favorite movie. And then the fact that he was then all of the clones, it's like I'm from this dinky little country that has now participated in like the largest armed conflict in the galaxy. Like, you know, clone troopers, that's what we're known for.
That's a wild connection, and it's really cool because to what you were just saying, like in the US, we had no idea who this guy was. We were, you know, and I think Star Wars has always done a pretty good job of introducing us to actors who should be noticed, right? I mean, even if you think about Force Awakens, I mean, Oscar Isaac and John Boyega and Daisy Ridley. And Daisy Ridley, I can't even remember, had she done any that? She did like one or two things maybe. But these actors that other people may have heard of. Of course, Oscar was doing what was it, Narcos, right?
When an actor has like an obscure connection, it feels much more personal.
Sure, absolutely, definitely. Yeah.
You're like, I'm one of the dozen people that appreciates you from this role. Like, we go back further.
Yeah, and
like it's Diego Luna from Y Tu Mama Tambien, and now he's in Rogue One. You know,
right? And you feel like there's this. It's kind of like a band that you like, right? That and they make it big, and you're like, that's my band. Those are my guys, right? And
I was there at the basement shows before the arenas.
That's right. That's right. You're all, you're all just learning about this great thing. But that's a really interesting connection. Attack of the Clones, which it turns 20 this year. It's been kind of, that's a little bit freaky, right? But it's kind of, it tends to fall near the bottom for a lot of people in their favorite films for whatever reason. Where does it come in for you?
In terms of nostalgia, it ranks pretty high, maybe higher than it deserves. I don't know. I understand the criticism of that movie specifically.
Sure.
Episode 1, I will defend with my dying breath because I think it actually works as a cohesive, coherent film on its own. That can't be said of Attack of the Clones. It really relies on the movie before and the movie after to give you the necessary context to understand it all. Right. And I think it's a valid criticism that it is a CGI effects driven feature before the effects were quite ready.
Right. Yes.
They were leaning heavily on a crutch that was just a little too thin. I think that they could have made the movie with the same techniques 10 years later, and it would have been a goddamn masterpiece.
Yeah.
But you know what? He had confidence in his craft, and I love hearing behind the scenes talks during the prequels of George Lucas, literally describing the volume.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's like, it's right here. I've got it right here. I just don't have those missing pieces. And like, just now that we have that technology, you can fully appreciate the brilliance of this man.
Yeah.
How far ahead of his time he was with his ideas. And like, what that Jabba the Hutt in special edition could have looked like if he had his right tools.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And I think that's one of the things that I've really become much more appreciative of somebody like Jon Favreau, right? Because he's one of those guys that looks at how he can use technology to tell his story in a very similar way to the way George did. And I think that's why he's a good fit there. I mean, he didn't invent the volume, but he drove it, right? He
The Lion King, I think, was his first foray with the volume. That's right.
Yep.
Pretty soon before Mandalorian, like he kind of hit the ground running once he got a taste of it.
Yes, 100%. And again, that's those things that you take for granted and now are really the way we're doing. And again, timely, right? And George did the same thing, just sort of creating technology that the world needed at that time. And I think the volume is going to really save a lot of the industry just as a result of being able to create things on smaller stages and control the COVID restrictions and things like that.
That's the most serendipitous part of it all, is the emergence of this technology at a time where everything was forced to go remote.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And I wonder how much, and it happened before this happened. So it's not like necessity drove the innovation. Like it was just like perfect timing.
Yeah. Yep. And
the volume was already there before the pandemic began. It's not like it was driven by that.
Yeah.
It's totally serendipitous.
It feels to me like Star Wars always sort of ends up with that sort of luck stuff. I've said it before on the show, and it's one of my favorite. I need to find the quote because I reference it in all this, so I probably have it totally wrong. But Ralph McQuarrie, I remember reading somewhere, told George, he's like, these there's no way these things are going to look good. It's a great idea, but if you think about everything for Star Wars A New Hope, everything in that movie worked. Whether it's the sound effects or the look. I mean, stormtroopers could have been a joke, but they're amazing. They're
got a little
iconic.
person in a trash can waddling by. It's a fan favorite.
Right, exactly. Right. And how is it that the Gonk droid and the mouse droid are still like people's favorites when they were the most simple things to put together?
I think you hit it on the head. Simplicity.
Yeah. I think that,
you can't improve upon a box with legs.
Exactly.
Where do you go from there?
Well,
arms? No, that's crazy.
We don't need arms. It's a box. Everything's fine. What does it do? I don't know. We'll figure that out later.
You guys may not like it, but this is what peak Android performance looks like.
I love the Gonk, and I love. Yeah. It's just there's all these little connections around Star Wars that just are so tangible and so connectable, and that seems to be it. And one of the things that you have done is you have really taken to, and maybe tell me how you got into Star Wars fan films. How did that become something that you became so excited about? I mean, you've reviewed over 100 on your YouTube channel. Which
yes. I'm up
by
to
the way, let me just say
124.
Let me say thank you, because I've discovered fan films through your site, which is so cool.
That is the objective, is to signal boost as many of these fan films as I can. Some of them really don't need my help. Some of them have like more views than I do. But some of these channels have like literally single digit subscribers.
Yep.
And maybe a couple dozen views on the video. And it's like some of the best imaginative, like love letter to Star Wars that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Fan films are great. I watched a lot of fan films when I was a kid, back on the Fan Network.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, like classics like Pink 5 and Shroops and things like that.
Yep.
And when I decided to start, becoming a content creator, I was like, I need Star Wars themed reactions. And it just seemed like a perfect fit. Because people are making them all the time.
Yeah.
There's no end in sight to fan films. The Mandalorian, we got Book of Boba Fett's got 7 episodes left, and then we got to wait another dry spell until the next content drop, but not fan films. Someone in Algeria is about to post one tomorrow. And someone in Paris will post one a week later.
Right.
They're everywhere.
What do you think it is about Star Wars and maybe it's because I'm a Star Wars fan and Star Wars focused, I feel like there are more fan films for Star Wars. I'm sure there's tons of Star Trek and Doctor Who and everything else out there. But what is it about Star Wars? What have you learned as being somebody who's become sort of an expert on Star Wars fan films? What is it you think that attracts people to wanting to make these sort of things?
I think that the main draw for Star Wars is that it's just sheer unbridled escapism. If you want to boil it down and get specific, people like that it's retrofuturist. People like that it's a fantasy epic, the archetypes, there's things. But at the bottom of it all, everyone wants to see themselves as someone that could be in that universe. And I think the thing that's so inviting about Star Wars as a concept to make your fan film about is that they really do a great job of making that galaxy feel huge. And feeling like you're looking at a plywood set, but right around that corner, there's all this cool stuff. Like you really believe that there's stuff around that corner.
Right.
And if you're a budding filmmaker trying to create, like have some creative expression, just walk around that corner and set your tripod up right there. That's your fan film. Like there's so many little opportunities weaved into this narrative, little pockets for you to tell your own story. And what's amazing about the fan films is that you're not constrained by canon, by continuity, by anything at all. You can make a fan film where Darth Vader meets Superman and they team up to beat up Batman, like whatever. You're the director. It's your fan film, buddy. You're not going to make any money off it, but you know that going in. And that's the thing that I think is the most endearing about these fan films is that all of them are a labor of love. You can't, it's not commercially viable. It's all copyrighted content. The only way you can make it is by not monetizing it. There was a pretty high profile one that came out like 2 or 3 years ago. It was a Darth Vader, Shards of the Past.
Yep.
A lot of money spent on that. And it was a bit of a controversy when it was temporarily blocked. And then they were able to work out some sort of an agreement where no money would be made on it or all the proceeds would go back to Lucasfilm. But it's just not worth the undertaking if you try to make money off a fan film. So you know that it's always a passion project. It's always just someone's pure celebration for the fandom. It's like, I love Star Wars so much, I'm going to make my own movie about it. Like to me, that's some next level praise for a franchise, for a film series, is wanting to be a part of it that badly, you know?
Yeah. No, and I think it's an extension of sort of the collecting, right? I think Star Wars, more than any other franchise, has the craziest among the craziest collectors. I mean, again, look behind you, look behind me. I mean, there's something about Star Wars that makes you want to be a part of it. And whether it's, having a little Darth Vader micro helmet or having, a full becoming a 501st member or just simply collecting a handful of pops, there's something about it that you want to be a part of. And I think the fan film thing, interesting to hear you say it is, I think you're right. I think it's that I created something in that universe. It doesn't matter that it's not canon. And remarkably, as you said, there's 26 people who might watch this film that somebody pours years of their life into. It's and interacting with Star Wars Twitter, I found this to be so much truer than I realized, is that headcanon is very powerful. Oftentimes it can be more powerful than real canon for people. And creating a fan film is the ultimate expression of your headcanon also, you're offering your own installment to the Star Wars movies and saying, this is what I say happened at some point. And you can believe it or not, but this is like this is my personal take on it. And the fact that people are inspired to express themselves artistically this way, I don't know. It just inspires me. I love it. Yeah. And I don't have a nice camera or some good costumes. I'm not about to make a fan film myself. So my way of contributing to this process is to watch them, review them, point out some references, and try and give them a signal boost. Yeah. I always link back to the original creator and try and get at least a couple subscribers thrown their way per reaction. If you could recommend one or two, which ones would you call out for people to check out? Oh man, there have been some excellent ones over the years. For example, there was one called Scorekeeper. I believe that was 2019. It's about Bosk. Excellent prosthetic Bosk, by the way. Dr. Afra makes an appearance. Some really fun stuff. But it's a retelling of the Predator story with a bunch of Pathfinder rebels in the jungle with Bosk. Oh wow, that's cool. It's very fun. It's very fun. The Imps series, Imps, The Relentless, Rhymes with Maintenance. Those are some older fan films. Those came out in the early 2000s. Really impressive high production values considering how old they are. And they got Peter Cullen. They got Megatron to be their, or Optimus rather, to be their narrator, which is hilarious. That's fantastic. That's great. There's a playlist on my YouTube channel that has 124 fan films in it right now, along with my reactions and reviews. And there's always links to the original, so you don't always have to watch it with my face stuck in there. I think that's one of the cool things about it. This is a pure compliment, not just because you're on the show with me, but it's cool to watch it on your channel the first time, because like watching it in the theater or watching it with a buddy. So it's like sitting on the couch with you and you're sort of able to kind of have that, because again, I think Star Wars is about that interaction, whether it's you trying to put yourself into it somehow or spending time on Twitter, in my case, too much time on Twitter, and having conversations with people and just sharing the experience. So your channel does a fantastic job of creating that sort of environment. So again, I totally recommend that.
Thank you. That's absolutely the vibe that I go for.
That's great.
I always feel like I'm not teaching you a class. I'm hanging out. We're hanging out together. That's absolutely what I always try to go for. And
that's definitely the tone, which is great. I mean, it's you could, like you said, you could end up becoming a bit scholarly on it and be like, well, actually in 18 BBY, that would have, right.
In chapter 4, article 3, subsection 2, I think you'll find, right. No, I'm not the teacher. I'm the guy who's like, hey, shut up. If the teacher comes back in here, we're in trouble. We need a lookout in case of the teacher.
Every time I hear the words fan film, I go in my head, I go straight back to Troops, which of course is one of the first ones. And it's just,
1997, the same year as the re-releases. Yep.
And I remember, taking forever on my dial-up modem to download it and watch it. And it was just sort of that, it was so well done. And it really kicked off all of that stuff, which was, and it was interesting too, because I'm sure you recall that there was sort of that Lucasfilm wasn't sure what to do about fan films. Did they shut them down or do they encourage them? And they went so far as to create the Fan Film Awards,
which was
for a while.
Awesome. They should do that again.
I would love to.
I don't know if the climate today would support such a thing, honestly.
Yeah. I think you might be right.
A little bit too litigious for that. But speaking of Troops, I reviewed Troops. That was one of the first fan film reviews that I did. And Kevin Rubio saw it and he commented on it and said like that he loved the review, and he told me that he made it in 1997. So it finally went full circle, and that started happening a number of years ago, because I've been doing YouTube for about 5 years now. Mm-hmm. And about a year or two ago, I started regularly getting comments on my reviews from the creators of the fan films.
Oh, that's great.
And it's gotten to the point where now I'm getting messages on social media from people saying, "Hey, I'm making a fan film. It'll be ready in a couple months. I hope you review it." Like,
that's great.
It's becoming like a goal for fan film makers to be like, got to get Cal Katarn's approval on this. Like, that's the final step to releasing it. Got to watch me watch it.
Now, do you ever get to a position where you're watching one, you're like, I'm having a tough time finding some good stuff to say about this, or do you?
So I really try to, if I have criticism, to make it constructive.
Yeah.
There have only been 1 or 2 cases where I tapped out. I tapped out halfway through. I was like, I can't salvage a positive review of this, so I'd rather just not.
Right.
Rather than like, I don't want to tear this to shreds, so I'm just going to quietly close this window and move on to the next one. And I won't say what those are.
No, of course not.
But,
no.
And that rarely, like I said, 124 fan films. That's happened maybe twice.
That's great. Yeah. Well, that's great. And, I think it's interesting. And it kind of leads me to the next thing that I want to chat with you a little bit about is sort of that, what is the point of, like, what value would it be to, it's like the worst thing for me. I don't have any tattoos, but I see people who are like, hey, check out my new Star Wars tattoo and on Facebook, like on any of the groups that I'm in, and people just rip it apart. And I'm like, no, don't just, if you don't have to say something negative, you just move on. You don't have to comment.
No, it's true. And people tweeting, like responding to a tweet to say, I don't care. It's like, you know who cares less? People who didn't tweet. Yeah. No, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. But at the same time, don't make it like, don't fake it and say like, oh, I loved this thing with like a nervous eye twitch like that. No one's going to see right through that.
Right.
I always try to find something positive to say, and it's very rare that I won't be able to find something I like about it.
Sure.
And if I absolutely hate it, I'll just move on and not acknowledge it, because I would rather focus my energy on things, give spotlight to things that I do like. Well, and usually if I don't like something, it's not because of the fan film. It's because of something like meta about it that is not going to work.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, it's the passion that went into it. That alone is worth praising. And then, if you see what else you can get out of it, which is great.
Yeah. Like this guy gave it the old college try. Next.
But so speaking of Mandalorian and now Book of Boba Fett, you are a bit of a Mandalorian expert. Just through your the way I followed you, the things that you play in your in the Old Republic stuff.
I do like me some Mandos.
Yeah,
it is known.
You got that really super cool Mando helmet back there with the horns on it and a couple others.
Real quick, that is the helmet of my player character in the Old Republic, which was 3D printed and sent to me based on the in-game files.
That's amazing. That's
probably my favorite helmet for that reason.
So see, there's another piece of that dyad, because I had my battle droid who does a little commentary on my show every week 3D printed. So I could have my connection. So, but let's talk Book of Boba Fett. And now by the time this drops, we will be 2 episodes in. So the perception let's not focus so much on the details of the show, but let's talk about how excited and what's your expectation of a show that uncovers this sort of silent, now becoming anti-hero. What's your hopes and expectations to see in a series like this, especially based on where we are from sort of a streaming perspective for Star Wars, where all the stories are starting to be told?
I would say I am not expecting any shocking revelations that are going to rewrite the fabric of anything that we know in the story. So far, everything has happened the way you would expect it to happen in terms of the flashbacks. Like Kamino was awesome to see. Geonosis was awesome to see. Boba coming out of the Sarlacc pit was beat for beat the way it's been described in legends in multiple sources. It was pretty much how it was described in Robot Chicken.
Exactly.
You guys gotta go flamethrower. But I expect some awesome tie-ins with other pieces of Star Wars media. I want to see the return of Emilia Clarke as Kira in Crimson Dawn.
Yeah,
I think that's likely. I think Cad Bane is less likely, but still very much on my wish list.
Yeah.
A meeting between Omega and Boba, tie in that Bad Batch.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll happen in season 1. But I don't know. I think that it's very important to temper your expectations. I don't feel like mine necessarily needed readjusting after the 38-minute premiere, because that's kind of what I was expecting in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Some badass action. I expect a softening of Boba's character in a realistic, believable way.
Yeah.
I think that his experiences, it was obvious in The Mandalorian season 2, which took place some time after those flashbacks, that Boba had spent a lot of time reflecting and had kind of actualized as a person, just from the way that he was willing to honor his arrangement with Din after the fact and say, I will keep helping you until you get Grogu back. On my honor. The fact that it was so important to him to show him the chain code of Django, that hasn't been important to him in previous interactions with him. He's just like, I'm Boba Fett. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to do the job. Man, a few words. He's willing to take this time and give this exposition and talk about how important it is that this armor is his father's legacy, and I need this back. An interesting thing in Mandalorian culture is that colors are all very significant. And in the original trilogy, Boba had kill markers, tally marks along the side of his helmet here. They were painted yellow. Yellow in Mandalorian culture signifies a vengeance and a prowess in combat, showing that he has killed, presumably Jedi in Legends to avenge the death of his father at the hands of Mace Windu. When he re-armored his kit and repainted his armor in Mandalorian, those stripes went from yellow to red. Red is also a significant color in Mandalorian culture, and it denotes honoring one's parenting and lineage. And I think that is a very subtle way of showing where Boba's priorities have shifted already, that he's no longer out about prowess in combat and vengeance and bloodlust. It's about honoring his legacy and Django and, the things that came before him. And for that. And so I think that they've already started planting the seeds of that change. And if you've noticed those things, then you'll find the changes that are happening in Book of Boba Fett to be pretty much in keeping with what we've already been seeing in The Mandalorian season 2. Like, this is a man who spent some time reflecting, self-actualizing in a bag to tank somewhere. Well, now we get to see it happen. Yeah.
And I think it's, I put up a fairly long-winded tweet today about this sort of expectation that fans have. And it's exciting to, I look behind you, I see rows and rows of Legends book, so clearly Legends is
it's
part of your story.
Yeah,
that's a big part of your Star Wars story. And
absolutely.
people tend to be between that and Luke and the Last Jedi. They tend to have this image of what they want from these characters, and some people will be satisfied with it and some people will not. And it's interesting because to me, everything you just said is 100% what I was thinking, in that it's there. The way I put it today is the reputation is the stories that precede you, right? So, right. If somebody believes that you are a cold-blooded, ruthless killer because of stories they've heard, it doesn't matter if you are or not, because that has become what you are.
Exactly.
And that will get you what you need. And the same thing with Luke. If people believed that he faced down the First Order with just his laser sword, and that inspired an entire galaxy. So that
it's a bit of a Dread Pirate Roberts situation.
100%. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a very well good way to put it. And when you have read all these books and you've seen Grandmaster Luke Skywalker of Legends facing down the Yuuzhan Vong with his laser sword single-handedly, you come to expect this of him, because even though this is no longer canon, like I was saying before, head canon is so very important to people.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in your head canon, it doesn't matter if it's in Legends or not. Like it becomes part of your expectations. And I think that a lot of people have been falling victim to their own expectations, because like these movies can never be tailor-made to you and also the guy next to you, because you both have different opinions.
Right.
One of you is going to lose if it comes down to that. Like, I don't know. I can't stop thinking about the dark period where LucasArts had gone belly up. There were no new movies in the making. The buyout hadn't fully happened yet. And the best we had to offer was a dancing Star Wars Kinect game for the Xbox. Like, do not speak to me of the dark days of content, Gandalf. I remember. So it's so hard for me to complain when I'm handed a crisp 4K, beautiful looking Star Wars live action TV show. Who the hell am I to say what's wrong with it, man? I don't want to go back to Dancing with Lando.
100%. And I think that I think it's this unique sort of world that we live in, where there's just such a demand for getting what you want. And I love what you said there. It's like if you and I, who may have very similar Star Wars tastes, if we go in with our expectation, and I did the same thing with Last Jedi. I didn't ask yet your thoughts on Last Jedi, and if you want to give them, I'm more than happy to have the conversation. But I walked out of Last Jedi and I've said this on my show 100 times, I walked out thinking it was both the best and the worst Star Wars movie I'd ever seen. And it's because I went in, I knew what was going to happen in that movie. We were going to see the Knights of Ren. We were going to see Luke train Rey. We were going to see nothing that we expected to happen happened. Right. And once I got over that little bump, it wasn't the Star Wars that I created in my head, and then went back and watched it. I was like, well, this is actually a really solid story. It's a heavy story. There's a lot going on there. I admit that I also don't watch it all the time of the 10 Star Wars, 11 Star Wars movies.
It's a little bit too psychologically taxing to be on my comfort watch.
Correct. Yep.
But I think it is one of the most brilliant Star Wars movies, if not one of the most divisive.
Oh yes.
And I would put it in the worst column because of its divisive nature. I think that Star Wars should be something that really brings people together. But you can't really pin that on the movie. I would pin that more on the Star Wars fandom. Yeah. I don't know. Again, people falling victim to their own expectations. And I, for one, as someone who knows maybe too much about Star Wars sometimes, I really relish moments where I have no idea what the hell is going on.
Yep.
Oh my God, they just cut Snoke in half. What?
Yep.
I enjoyed that feeling because it's rare for me.
Yep. Yeah. And I agree. I think that's, especially in a world that's spoiled, right? I mean, for example, with Spider-Man No Way Home, so much of that, like even the trailers, I was saying after I walked out of it, I was talking to a friend of mine and said, if I wish in the trailers we didn't see Doc Ock and Green Goblin, because that would have been so cool to be like, whoa, what just happened? Like that's why, to me, and as you said, we didn't get it in episode 1 of Book of Boba Fett. because it can't happen all the time. But that Grogu moment in episode 1 of The Mandalorian was one of those rare times where you stand up while you're watching it and you point at the screen like, what just, and
that was a cultural event.
Absolutely.
By far.
Absolutely.
Like Grogu's one of the, he's one of the big ones in recent years. There are people that have never seen a Star Wars that know who Baby Yoda is, you know, like that's a thing now. It's an irrevocable part of pop culture. And he was instantly.
Yeah.
And that's that is, okay. I will say that is the one expectation that wasn't fully met for Book of Boba Fett for me. Was I didn't necessarily expect it, but I was wondering the whole time, like, are they going to turn at us on our heads again in the last shot like The Mandalorian did?
Right.
Because Mandalorian is the only live action TV show that we've seen so far. So it's hard to know what to take as precedent and what to take as a unique thing that this show is doing.
Yeah.
And so now we're learning that a lot of things were in fact unique to The Mandalorian. But like, I think one of the reasons why it was so unique is that there's an entire industry built on spoilers and leaks now.
Yeah. Yes.
And the puppet never came out. Like, we never heard about this until we were watching it. And so that like is a very impressive success for the team behind keeping that clandestine. Like, they really did a good job keeping that away from us. Cause I would have heard about it if it was a leak out there, man. It would have gotten to my ears.
100%. Well, it's interesting. I had, as a lot of people did, I had, I can't think of his name, Dominic Pace, who was one of the bounty hunters in Mandalorian. And he was in a number of scenes where Din was holding Grogu in action scenes. And he said all he knew is that there was some sort of a kid. That's all he knew.
So they used a substitute in those scenes.
I guess like he had no idea what the cargo was other than, so and that's amazing. These are people who are on set. And so those are the kinds of things. And I think
you're talking about the shootout scene in The Siege. I mean, not The Siege, episode 3.
The third episode. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. His pod's closed in that whole sequence. We never actually see the baby.
Right. He's holding it. He's like underneath the stagecoach or whatever. Yeah. Yep. So
imagine if they had the baby in there and some stuntman just like peeks inside.
Yeah. I'm going to go sell this to
IG-88 just shoots him. Or IG-11.
The end. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that's, I love what you're saying about expectations. And it's so hard though, because and I think it's a common theme in this conversation is it's about the passion for the material. And so it's impossible to not sort of get so excited that
absolutely
it just can't. I mean, and honestly, that was when I walked out of Phantom Menace, I was disappointed, but I had built it up for so many years in my head and that it was never going to be what and now Phantom Menace is among my favorite Star Wars movies, oddly enough. So
it's really hard to focus on what's in front of you when you're preoccupied with what's missing.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important to try not to, I don't know. It's impossible not to have expectations. And I also think it's really hard when it's a subject matter that's really close to your heart that you grew up with, that you really love, not to take that personally.
Yeah.
Because if it's something that you love on a personal level, it's hard not to take that personally when some stranger is now sitting in the driver's seat and they're playing with your action figures. Yeah. And you're like, no, he doesn't shoot like that. You don't like, those are my toys. Give them back. Like, we all have that inner child in us, and that voice is always there. But I don't know. I think it boils down to a matter of self-control and etiquette as well. You're allowed to think such things, but maybe don't make it the essence of your entire personality. I think there is a problematic subculture of fandom, not Star Wars fandom necessarily, but fandom in general, where it's simply a pastime to be critical and to nitpick and like to hate on things. Yeah. You see a movie trailer and you're like, oh, I can't wait to go complain about that in the theater.
Right.
Like, and if that's how you get your fun, like, so be it. I will never understand that. But I think it's something that needs to be, at least we need to be acknowledging and be mindful of the fact that, like, for example, they choreographed an entire and wrote an entire Broadway style musical for the end of Hawkeye, like an incredible amount of work, stuck that in as the stinger at the end of the credits. And people hated on it because it didn't pan to Moon Knight in the audience.
Right.
It's like, no, why are you entitled to this? Like,
yes.
You were given a gift here and you're yelling because your Malibu Stacy didn't come with the right hat. It's like, you got a new thing. You're being given this thing that you like, you didn't even ask for it. Be grateful.
Yeah.
And be grateful or be quiet, you're allowed to hate it, but you don't necessarily have to broadcast that to people who are trying to enjoy it.
That's 100%. And we talked about it earlier. I mean, it's not that hard, and I've been very conscious of it because I have seen it, and I try to be conscious of it. You can scroll by something that you disagree with. You can, the phrase that I use all the time is, don't yuck somebody else's yum, right? I mean, if you love whatever and I don't, why try to dampen that excitement? It doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anybody. I don't understand the concept. Honestly, it's so far.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of following going on there as well.
Yeah.
There's a desire to conform. There's safety in feeling like your opinion is mirrored by the people around you. And if everyone around you is saying this is terrible, then you better chime in and talk about how terrible it is, regardless of your own feelings. And that's kind of like a schoolyard thing. I don't know. Social media kind of has that in common with like kids on a playground. There's this anonymity to being on a social media platform where, I don't know, people aren't as careful with their words. People aren't as careful with their etiquette.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get punched by your computer. You can say whatever you want to say. I don't know. I think people really need to like keep it in check and remember where they are and who they're talking to, and that you're going to be face to face with these people in a couple of months at Star Wars Celebration.
Exactly.
And I'd love to be hugging everybody, not dodging everybody's punches when I get there.
Right.
It'd be really nice,
Yeah. Yeah.
We have something in common, whether or not we all want to believe it. Like, we're all here because we love Star Wars,
Exactly.
Let's talk about the things we love instead of talking about the things that we hate. That's always what you should be focusing on. I'd rather spend my energy talking about things that I enjoy, because that way the things that I don't like are taking up less retail space in my brain,
Yes, 100%. That is a great perspective, and I think we could definitely do with more of that. So, well, Kyle, it's been great talking to you about something that we love. This has been a lot of fun. Where can people find you?
On, man.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to have you back on, because I want to hit you with my 10 questions at some point. So, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Kyle Katarn with a 1 for the L. Instagram, the exact same name on all my socials, actually. And then I'm on YouTube as Kyle Katarn, and Twitch as the Grizzled Wizard, randomly. I know, bit of a curveball there. I have a second YouTube channel that's non-Star Wars related that's called the Grizzled Wizard, and my Twitch is affiliated with that. That way I can play Star Wars games, but also a little bit of The Witcher or Mass Effect or whatever I feel like. So there are links to all of this on all of my socials. So you just have to find your way to one of them, and you can be pointed to everything else.
Awesome.
Live content weekly on Twitch. Monday, Wednesday, Friday drops on YouTube.
Perfect. And I will have all those links also in the show notes. So if you're listening and you want to check out Kyle and all the great stuff he does, you can find it there. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. This was great. I
had a really good time. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and I'd be happy to come back again.
Awesome.
These 10 questions sound intriguing. I don't know what they are.
Well, see,
I'm gonna go do my training montage in the back. Hold some Legends books and do some squats, some push-ups.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share, rate, and review it. Follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast. Go to our website, atgcast.com, for more information about the show. Find some of the old episodes if you're into that kind of thing. And, hey, you can also buy some merch there. And, what the hell, become a part of our Patreon program. Or go to patreon.com/ATGcast. Well, this has been copyright 2021 Beat in the Seat Studios. Our music comes from the band Silver Colored Knob, which you can find anywhere you find music. And I am out of here. Have a good one, and may the Force be with you. Or something. I don't know. This is what you're supposed to say at the end, right? Okay.